you get some of that good Snoop weed?
I've smoked with Unc before, yeah.
Yeah.
That was Lauren admitting she was close with Snoop. And at first, everyone thought it was just a normal friendship. But now, new footage of Snoop and Lauren together is raising eyebrows. Some people believe it confirms a hidden connection, maybe even that she played a role in setting him up. Let me break it down. Snoop and Lauren London, new footage. That's all it took to send the entire hip-hop community into a frenzy. Footage that doesn't just show Snoop Dogg smiling for the cameras or doing one of his laid-back Uncle Snoop skits, but footage that puts him side by side with none other than Lauren London, Nipsey Hussle's longtime partner, in the aftermath of Nipsey's murder. You see, Lauren London isn't just another mourner in Nipsey's circle, she is Nipsey's circle. From her heartbreaking tribute at the Staples Center to her powerful speech at the BET Awards, Lauren became the voice, the image, the symbol of Nipsey's loss. Whoever stood next to her wasn't just standing next to Lauren. They were standing next to Nipsey's entire empire. After Nipsey's death, Lauren wasn't just the grieving partner. She became the public face of his memory.
Yeah, but you don't know till it's at your front door. I always say the front row at the funeral is different. You know, when you have to sit on, like, you know, I've been at a lot of funerals.
I bet.
I've never sat front row at one. That's different.
What does that do to you?
Shift your perspective on life. You know what I mean? Make you see not only that is life short, but that it's a gift. You know, and because everyone's time is so different.
The way she spoke about him, as we just saw, turned her into the living embodiment of his memory. Brands put her front and center in campaigns honoring Nipsey. Award shows handed her the mic for tributes. Documentaries leaned on her voice to carry the story of his impact. She was everywhere, not because she wanted to be, but because the culture demanded it. People wanted to see her, to hear her, to know Nipsey's story through her. That turned her into something more than a partner. She became a chess piece. If you stood beside Lauren, you stood beside Nipsey's memory. And that's why this clip caused such an uproar, because proximity to Lauren meant proximity to Nipsey's legacy. And in a world where that legacy was already being fought over, Snoop's presence in that frame didn't look innocent. It looked calculated. But to understand why people reacted the way they did, you need to step back to the moment Nipsey was killed. When those shots rang out in front of the Marathon store, Los Angeles didn't just lose a rapper. It lost a community builder, a businessman, a man who had risen above the block while still holding it down. And when a man becomes bigger than his block, the fallout is never simple. Love is matched by jealousy. Loyalty is matched by betrayal. In the immediate aftermath, Nipsey's brother, Black Sam, became the protector. He wasn't just mourning, he was defending. He made it clear that Nipsey's empire would remain under family control and that anybody who disrespected his brother's name would face consequences.
That disrespect, bro. You better smack. In their presence, ain't nobody disrespected, bro.
These weren't empty words. They were a warning shot. Sam knew vultures would circle. He knew opportunists would move in. And he wasn't about to let Nipsey's empire become a feeding ground. But here's where things got messy. Nipsey's empire wasn't just built on contracts and businesses. It was built on relationships. And relationships are fragile. Even among Nipsey's closest people, fractures appeared. Brick Baby admitted that he and Black Sam had their own clash after Nipsey's death. And the fight was about loyalty.
It basically was like, you rocking with him? Like, you rocking with him? I'm rocking with my brother.
This is what Nipsey's loss did. It forced people to pick sides. It made every alliance suspect. It turned grief into suspicion. And then came Charleston White's explosive claim. He said the truth nobody wanted to admit out loud. Nipsey was killed not just by one man, but by the jealousy of his own set.
All the big homies in the set was jealous of Nip, because all the young Nip. Nip got bigger than the program, so Nip got clipped because Nip.
Think about what that means. If Nipsey was clipped because he rose too high, then his empire wasn't just under attack from the outside, it was under siege from the inside. And this is where the industry enters. Because while the family fought for control and the streets wrestled with jealousy, the music industry saw opportunity. Nipsey had cracked a code. He owned his masters. He owned his brand. He owned his block. Independence was his crown jewel. And in an industry built on exploitation, that independence made him dangerous. Suge Knight, from his prison cell, made the claim that connected everything. He said Puffy destabilized Nipsey and his circle by introducing them to harder drugs.
Puffy the one got these dudes on hardcore drugs. He was introducing these guys to different type of level of drugs.
This wasn't just partying, this was weakening a movement. And then he dropped the bomb on Snoop, that Snoop was maneuvering in the shadows, even trying to bail out Keef D, the man tied to Tupac's murder, because Keef was talking too much.
I said, look, I don't have nothing to do with none of that, and I'm not leaving prison to go to nobody county jail. To the point they were saying, well, you can't leave and sacrifice a little bit in the county jail to stop that black man from getting life. Hell the No.
Literally, just weeks after Nipsey's murder, the streets of Los Angeles were thick with suspicion. The Marathon store became sacred ground, but also contested ground. Who had the right to represent Nipsey? Who was speaking for him? And who was using his name for clout? The whispers got louder with every passing day. Longtime affiliates were accused of exploiting Nipsey's name in interviews. Social media posts turned into battlegrounds. Someone would pose by a mural and immediately be accused of chasing fame. Another would claim they were like family and be called a fraud. It was chaos, and that chaos wasn't random. It was the fallout of Nipsey's death leaving a power vacuum. Putting all those pieces together, you can see why people got worked up. They expect Lauren London to understand that she isn't just grieving. She's also holding the weight of Nipsey's empire on her shoulders. She is his torchbearer, and that Snoop getting too close to her is trying to take that torch. Snoop wants something from Nipsey, and he'll do whatever it takes to get. This he has proved in the past. Whether you believe it or not, it almost doesn't matter. What matters is that perception became reality, and the perception was clear. Snoop Dogg wasn't just mourning, he was positioning. Nipsey's death wasn't just a personal loss, it was a political act. By standing beside Lauren, Snoop gained proximity to Nipsey's memory. By gaining proximity, he gained credibility. And by gaining credibility, he strengthened his own position as the elder statesman of the West Coast. To some, it was natural. To others, it was predatory. But in both cases, the outcome was the same. The footage became a symbol of the larger battle for Nipsey's throne. And make no mistake, there was a throne. If you believed what Suge said earlier about Snoop, then you'd understand that Nipsey wasn't just taken out by a lone gunman. He was weakened, destabilized, and left vulnerable by forces bigger than the neighborhood. And who else did Suge accuse of playing both sides? Snoop Dogg. That's why the footage hit harder than anyone expected. It wasn't about what was literally happening in the clip. It was about what it represented. To the family, it looked like outsiders stepping in. To the streets, it looked like power shifting. To the industry, it looked like an opportunity. And to the fans, it looked like confirmation of every suspicion they'd been whispering since 2019. And of course, why wouldn't fans be suspicious? Everyone knows exactly who Snoop is. Snoop's history of betrayal. Tupac Shakur, one of the most legendary rappers to ever touch a mic, was gunned down in 1996 in Las Vegas. And in the years since, the story of what really happened that night has been told and retold 1,000 times. But there's one constant. People keep pointing at the people closest to him. And time after time, Snoop's name finds its way into that conversation. The reason is simple. When Tupac was alive, Snoop was his so-called brother in arms. They recorded together. They partied together. They stood on stages together. But behind the scenes, Snoop was cozying up with the very people Pac considered enemies.
That night. When you look at it, Dad said that, hey, we weren't going. Snoop was on, death row, basically Tupac and everything above. And something gonna happen.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Warren G says that Snoop was at his house watching the fight, and he had the walkie-talkie, the radio.
For instance, Big Dre, allegedly in the car with Keith D the night Tupac was killed. You'd think anyone with loyalty to Pac would stay miles away from someone like that, not Snoop. He worked with Big Dre on a mixtape after Tupac died. When Tupac died in 1996, Snoop was in a complicated position. Their relationship had been strained in Pac's final days, but after the death, Snoop emerged as one of Pac's loudest mourners, aligning himself with the tragedy as well as the person linked to it, and reshaping his image in the process. Let that sink in. Your brother is murdered. The suspects are still in plain sight. And instead of distancing yourself, you're cutting records with them. That's not loyalty. That's betrayal. And Snoop's betrayal of Pac didn't stop there. He's been caught over and over embellishing stories about Pac, sometimes twisting the truth, other times outright fabricating events. For example, he once claimed Tupac was the one who introduced him to blunts. Sounds like a cool story, right? Except the math doesn't add up. Cameron Diaz herself admitted she used to buy weed from Snoop back in high school, which means Snoop had been deep in that lifestyle long before Pac came around. So why lie? Why create this fake bond with Tupac after the fact? The answer is image, legacy. Snoop knows the public loves to see him as part of Pac's inner circle, so he rewrites history to fit that narrative. Napoleon from Tupac's own Outlaws crew called him out on this. That's a false narrative. Pac wasn't disliked in prison, he was respected. Snoop just made that up. Even Nas got dragged into Snoop's web of lies. Snoop once told a story about Tupac confronting Nas at the 1996 VMAs, claiming Nas rolled up with 100 shooters and Pac was reckless. But according According to Napoleon, who was actually there, that showdown never happened the way Snoop described. In reality, Pac and Nas handled it like gentlemen, squashing any misunderstanding on the spot. Nas himself confirmed Snoop's version was nonsense. So again, the pattern: create myths after someone dies, position yourself as their brother, and distract people from the fact that your actions while they were alive told a different story. Now let's talk about Biggie. Snoop has often painted himself as being close to Biggie, especially after Tupac's death. He's told stories of heartfelt conversations, moments of peace and respect between them. But according to Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, that's all media spin.
But yet still, Big came out to California, and you don't see not one picture of him and Snoop together. You don't see not one place where they smoked a blunt together. Both of them like to smoke. We was in the studio with Bone Thugs and Harmony. Snoop never came over there. So you tell me, was they really that cool? Or it was just a facade that was put up?
Gene Deal questioned why, if Snoop and Biggie were so close, they never hung out when Biggie was in LA. But somehow Snoop claims he saw Biggie in Atlanta after Pac's death. Come on, man. Once again, the narrative doesn't match the reality. Which brings us right back to Nipsey Hussle. Because if you're seeing the pattern, you already know what happened next.
It's up, man. I just want to send prayers out to Nipsey Hussle and his family, to Lauren London and her family. This is up, man.
Nipsey dies. Snoop cries. Snoop calls him my dear brother and more. Then he drops a tribute record. He tells the world Nipsey was the new Snoop, and fans, in their grief, eat it up. But when you look closer, you start seeing the cracks. Snoop mourned Nipsey, yes, but he was also caught hanging out with Big U, the very man Nipsey warned others about. Nipsey had a diss track aimed directly at Big U, making it clear he didn't want to be controlled or extorted. Everybody knows Big U was shaking Nipsey down, making him pay protection fees. When Nipsey stopped paying, he ended up dead. And yet Snoop enjoyed Big U's company. So once again, history repeats, just like with Tupac, just like with Biggie. When the legend is alive, Snoop aligns with their enemies. When the legend is gone, Snoop steps forward to rewrite the story, putting himself at the center as the grieving brother. This is why Nipsey's death can no longer be looked at as a random hit. Eric Holder may have pulled the trigger, but Eric Holder didn't orchestrate the play. There were bigger forces, hidden hands, people with more to lose if Nipsey succeeded. And thanks to these leaks, it looks like Snoop is now confirming what the streets have always whispered. Lauren London wasn't just caught in the middle. She might have been on the inside all along. Towards the end of Nipsey's life, he started distancing himself from certain industry events, refusing to check in or play the extortion games. If only Nipsey had realized the friend by his side had connections to the very forces he was trying to escape, maybe things would have been different. Because if there's one thing Snoop has proven time and time again, it's that he knows how to survive. The ripple effect of Nipsey's death. When Nipsey Hussle was murdered on March 31st, 2019, it wasn't just another tragic headline in the hip-hop world. It was an earthquake that shattered millions of lives, sending shockwaves through music, culture, and communities around the world. For many, Nipsey wasn't just an artist they listened to in the car or streamed on Spotify. He was a living, breathing example of possibility. He stood as proof that you could come from nothing, rise above the chaos of the streets, and build something lasting without selling out to the system. Fans loved him not only because of his music, but because he lived what he rapped. He didn't just spit verses about ownership, he owned his masters. He didn't just talk about reinvesting in the hood, he built businesses in Crenshaw and gave jobs to people who had been written off by society. And he didn't just rap about loyalty, he stood by his community even after fame and money gave him every chance to leave it behind. So when the news broke that Nipsey had been gunned down in front of his own Marathon store, a place that had become a symbol of his vision, the reaction was raw, immediate, and overwhelming.
It's crazy how the streets don't love it, but we still be loving the streets and shit.
In Los Angeles, people flooded the streets. Outside the Marathon, crowds gathered, leaving flowers, candles, handwritten letters, and murals. People cried openly, hugging strangers, because they all felt like they had lost a family member. And in a way, they had. Nipsey had been the voice of South Central, but his reach stretched across the world. Murals appeared not only in Los Angeles, but in cities across the country, from Houston to New York to Chicago. Even overseas, from London to Lagos, people painted Nipsey's face on walls, declaring that the marathon continues. Social media lit up with tributes, hashtags, and emotional posts. For weeks, it felt like the entire culture had stopped to grieve. Fans weren't just mourning the man, they were mourning what he stood for. They looked at Nipsey and saw a blueprint for a better future. He was proof that you could turn your back on the industry's tricks, hold on to your independence, and still thrive. His death left people asking a painful question. If someone like Nipsey, someone building businesses, helping his people, staying true to himself, could be struck down like this, what hope was left? Nipsey's death didn't just devastate fans, it devastated the very artists who had grown up watching him. For younger rappers, Nipsey wasn't just a peer. He was a mentor, a big brother, a living example of how to navigate the industry without losing yourself. Roddy Ricch has said openly that Nipsey's support helped him break into the mainstream. Nipsey gave him advice, co-signed his talent, and pushed him to believe that he could achieve more. For Roddy, losing Nipsey wasn't just losing a collaborator, it was losing a guiding light. YG, Nipsey's closest collaborator, broke down in public after the murder. He admitted he had lost more than a partner, he lost his brother. Their joint track, Last Time That I Checked, had become an anthem. But beyond the music, they were two men who wanted to change the streets they came from. YG said Nipsey made him think bigger, look beyond fame, and build something that would last. With Nipsey gone, YG confessed it felt like part of his vision had died too. Even heavyweights like Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z made it clear that Nipsey's impact went far beyond music. Kendrick, known for his own conscious lyricism, saluted Nipsey as someone who represented the best of Los Angeles, gritty, independent, visionary. Jay-Z went even further, quietly setting up a trust fund for Nipsey's children, Imani and Cross, ensuring that the legacy Nipsey left behind would not die with him. That move alone spoke volumes about how deeply Nipsey was respected by the highest levels of hip-hop. Nipsey's reach even extended into athletes, actors, and politicians. LeBron James called him an inspiration. Barack Obama sent a letter to Nipsey's memorial praising him for his commitment to his community. That's how powerful Nipsey's presence was. He wasn't just a rapper, he was a leader who crossed cultural lines. And perhaps the most devastating part, Nipsey was only just beginning. His album Victory Lap had finally cemented him as a Grammy-nominated star. It was the project he had spent years perfecting, and it proved he could succeed on his own terms. But Victory Lap was just the beginning of what Nipsey had planned. Behind the scenes, Nipsey was building a real estate empire in South Central. He wasn't buying houses in Beverly Hills. He was buying the very blocks he grew up on, determined to transform them into safe havens for the next generation. He was investing in tech startup, pushing for STEM programs for kids in the hood, and creating opportunities that would outlive any record deal. He spoke often about wanting to be more than a rapper. He wanted to be a mogul, someone who could shift the balance of power in hip-hop away from the corporations and back into the hands of the artists. Other rappers didn't see Nipsey as competition. They saw him as a leader. They saw him clearing the path, making it easier for the next wave to build ownership and independence. With Nipsey alive, the West Coast had not just a star, but a visionary capable of reshaping the entire industry. With him gone, that momentum was cut short. The marathon, his clothing brand, and his message still live on, but the full scope of what Nipsey could have achieved was stolen the moment those shots rang out in front of his store. That's why Nipsey's death hit so hard. It wasn't just about losing a man, it was about losing a future. Fans saw him as a symbol of hope. Artists saw him as a blueprint for independence. Communities saw him as proof that someone could rise up from the hood and bring everyone else with him. And when that was taken away, it felt like the system had won again. The same old story, a visionary cut down just as he was about to change the game. But if there's one thing Nipsey always said, it's that the marathon continues. And in the wake of his death, those words became a rallying cry. Murals, tattoos, social media posts, songs, and movements all dedicated to keeping Nipsey's vision alive. Still, no tribute, no mural, no hashtag can erase the pain of knowing what was lost. Nipsey Hussle wasn't just another rapper. He was a leader, a teacher, a father, and a businessman. And his death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a cultural robbery. But here's the most painful twist. As fans mourned and artists pledged to carry on Nipsey's legacy, whispers began to spread that maybe this wasn't just another senseless act of violence. Maybe it wasn't just Eric Holder pulling the trigger. Maybe the people closest to Nipsey, the ones who should have protected him, were the ones holding the door open for his enemies. That's why fans today aren't just grieving Nipsey's death. They're angry. Angry at the idea that someone like Diddy, with his endless influence and power, could have pulled strings behind the scenes. Angry at the suggestion that Lauren London, the woman who stood on stage and sobbed for Nipsey, might have been closer to Diddy than anyone realized. And angry at Snoop Dogg, Nipsey's so-called brother, who always seems to show up at the center of these tragedies with a eulogy on his lips but questions hanging over his loyalty. The grief of losing Nipsey turned into suspicion. Suspicion turned into outrage. And outrage turned into a demand for answers. Fans are not content with Eric Holder did it anymore. They see the bigger picture. Nipsey wasn't just murdered by a man. He was silenced by a system of power, greed, betrayal, and manipulation. And the more you connect the dots, the footage of Snoop and Lauren looking too close, the tapes allegedly tying Lauren to Diddy's world, Snoop's history of betrayal with Tupac and Biggie, the more you realize that Nipsey's death wasn't the end of the marathon. It was the start of a much darker race. Because what the fans and artists lost wasn't just Nipsey, it was the future he was building for them. And the hardest pill to swallow, that future may have been stolen not by strangers, but by the very people who stood closest to him. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out more amazing content on our channel. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.